What's up, guys? This is Kid Achilles, and I am super excited to be kicking the channel off with this video. The myths of Theseus have been some of my favorites for a really long time. So yeah, let's just get right into it. We're going to go ahead and start off with the birth of Theseus. Theseus is born to Aegeus, who is a king of Athens, and Aethra, who is a princess of a place called Troezen, where a man named Pythias is king. So there's a couple things that we need to know about Aegeus as we get kicked off here. He does not have an heir. He's been trying real hard to produce an heir, but has been unsuccessful with both of his previous wives. So Aegeus decides to go and talk to the oracle at Delphi. On his way home from talking to the oracle, he stops at Corinth, where Medea is hanging out. Now, I'm not going to get too far into Medea's story. That's definitely a topic that deserves its own video. But what you need to know for the purposes of this story, Medea is real good with magic and her ass is on the run. He stops at Corinth, where he runs into Medea, tells Medea, what's going on, and she's like, all right, tell you what, I'll cut you a deal. I'll make sure you have an heir if, when the time comes, if I should come to Athens, you have to provide me with sanctuary. So Aegeus says, great, that sounds fantastic, you got yourself a deal. So let's fast forward a little bit. Sometime later, Aegeus is in Troezen visiting the court of King Pythias, and he sees Aethra. He's definitely about that. But the thing is, Aethra at this time is very distraught because she's already betrothed to a hero named Bellerophon. And Bellerophon has not returned. She has not heard from him. Things are looking bleak. She's not in the mood for romance. She is sad. And so, that night, from way over in Corinth, Medea starts working her magic and puts everyone over in Troezen into a drunken stupor. During this drunken stupor, Aegeus and Aethra lay together. Super weird way to be a wingman and help your buddy get laid, but that's what we got. So the night goes on and things don't get any better for Aethra. Poseidon, god of the sea, has also had his eye on Aethra. And so Athena, of all people, sends Aethra dreams that make her kind of sleepwalk and wade over to a neighboring island where Poseidon is waiting for her and then assaults her. As I said, here we are. So the next morning, Aegeus gets up and he goes to the top of a nearby hill where there's a giant boulder resting. He rolls his boulder out of the way and he places down a pair of his sandals and a special sword that he has. So he puts those items down, rolls the boulder over him, and he goes and tells Aethra, if you become pregnant and the child is truly mine, when the time comes, have them move that boulder and bring the items beneath it to me. I'll know them when I see them and I'll acknowledge this child as my heir. He fucks off to Athens, never to return to Troezen again. Aethra does indeed become pregnant, but the weird thing is, since she was assaulted by two men in the same night, and one of them was a god, and his seed being divine, it was able to mingle also with Aegeus' seed, and so her baby is able to have two biological fathers, that being Poseidon and Aegeus. So 9 months later, she births little Theseus. Some years later, baby Theseus becomes big baby Theseus. She tells him about his father, about what he's supposed to do. And so when the time comes, he goes and he moves that boulder. He moves the boulder pretty easily. He's a sturdy, strapping young lad. He gets what's beneath it. He is ready to make his way toward Athens. An important thing to note about Theseus and just about this time in general, Heracles is very active during this time. Heracles being the greatest hero, Theseus really admires Heracles. Heracles even has come to visit Pythias' court. There are two options when it comes to getting to Athens from Troezen. There is the route by sea, which is fast and safe, no danger. And there is the route by land that follows the coast and is riddled with bandits. Theseus decides to take the more difficult way. His grandfather and his mom are, begging him to just go ahead and take the safe route. But like we mentioned, Theseus is looking to gain himself some glory because he wants to be like his cousin Heracles, and also he kind of wants to have some deeds under his belt, when he presents himself to his father. Our boy makes up his mind. He is on his way to Athens, and so the first bandit he comes across is a man named Persephone. What Persephone does is he has a big metal club, and he just beats travelers to death with it. So he comes across Theseus, goes to beat the shit out of Theseus. Theseus is like able to, easily avoid him, takes the club from him, and, puts an end to him. And so this is like a cool moment for Theseus because he now has a club, similar to Heracles. So he's like, super jazzed about that. So the next bandit we come across is a guy named Sinis. And what Sinis does is he's strong enough to pull pine trees down from their tops and bend them to the ground. So another nickname for him is Pine Bender. But what he would do is bend the pines down, and as people were coming by, he'd ask for help. When you grabbed one of the pine trees, he'd let go, and he'd fucking send you flying. Or he would bend them both down, ask for help, and then tie the person, the traveler, either arm to either tree. And so then when he let go, they get ripped in half. So Theseus comes across him, wrestles him, overpowers him, and he sends the fucker flying like he would have done to Theseus. So yeah, Theseus is he's packing him up, he's getting him out of here. He's traveling along the coast, and so he goes up these cliffs, and at the top of these cliffs there's a man named Skyron. And what Skyron does at the top of this cliff is he asks travelers to help him wash his feet. And so when the travelers stop to help him wash his feet, he kicks them into the sea below, where a giant sea turtle is waiting to eat them. So he tries to trick Theseus. Theseus picks him up off the rock and throws him into the sea. He becomes turtle chow. The next bandit he comes across is a man named Cercyon. And Cercyon, his shtick is pretty simple. He will challenge you to a wrestling match, and then he just squeezes you to death. He challenges Theseus to a wrestling match. Theseus picks him up off the ground and just throws him down head first. He kills him immediately. Now, the next bandit is my personal favorite, a motherfucker by the name of Procrustes. And what Procrustes does, there are a couple of different versions of this. In one, he has a bed of one size, and he invites weary travelers to rest. And once they lay down, he ties them down, and if they're too short for the bed, he stretches them to make them fit. And if they are too long for the bed, he cuts off the extra on either side of the bed to make them fit. In the other story, he has two beds, one long and one small, where he would purposefully lay shorter people in the long bed and long people in the short bed, and like I said, either stretch them or cut off the extra. And so Theseus comes across him, throws him onto his bed, and lops off what doesn't fit. But yeah, with that, our boy has completed the bandit road and clocked his first 5 kills. Theseus has cleared the coast of bandits, and now he's about to arrive in Athens. And once he does, we jump back over to Medea and Aegeus. Since we last talked to Medea and Aegeus, she has come looking for sanctuary that she made him promise to give, back when he was trying to produce an heir. And so she's living in Athens. She's married to Aegeus now, and they also have a son. So I guess she kind of fulfilled her promise to him, about an heir, twofold. There's, she helped him to conceive Theseus and also gave him an heir herself. Seems like she could have done herself a favor and skipped a step there, but who am I? Okay, but the issue now is, like I said, Medea has a son with Aegeus, and so that son is in line to go ahead and take the throne from Aegeus. So now Medea has, even though she helped him to conceive Theseus, she has some shit to lose, if Theseus shows up. So he touches down in Athens, and through magic, she knows immediately that he's there. And so she starts plotting, and she goes over to Aegeus, and she says, "Hey, listen, someone has arrived in Athens, and they are conspiring to kill you and take your throne." And Aegeus is like, "Oh no," he hates that kind of thing. Medea says, "Yeah, I know, it's not great, but here's my plan. We're going to invite him to dinner, show him some hospitality, and then we're going to poison the motherfucker." And so Aegeus is like, yeah. Theseus shows up, asks for an audience with the king. He's granted an audience. They go ahead and prepare dinner so they can, have a nice little feast. And so they put the wine before Theseus. They're just talking, kind of shooting the shit. And then it's time for dinner. And so the food is served. In order to cut his meat, Theseus goes ahead and produces the sword that his dad left for him. Aegeus sees the sword, and he is, shocked immediately. And he smacks the fucking cup out of Theseus' hands, acknowledges him as his son. He's able to see Medea's treachery in trying to get him to kill his son, and so he expels her from Athens. She's gone, no more Medea. He's been recognized, and they live happily ever after. I'm kidding, they super duper don't. Theseus is Prince of Athens, he's got a few little deeds under his belt, but when he gets here, he hears about his father's problem with, his cousin. Aegeus has a cousin named Pallas who has 50 sons, and they are all just kind of always lurking in the shadows, looking for an opportunity to take the Athenian throne from Aegeus. And so now that Theseus has shown up, they're not too happy about that at all, because that, directly gets in the way of them obtaining the throne. So Theseus hears about this little issue, and he goes to confront Pallas and all his 50 sons and kills each and every one of them. So yeah, Theseus' journey, while it has been brief, has been very bloody. Back to Athenian affairs. So during this time, Athens has an agreement with Crete because Minos, who is a son of Zeus and the king of Crete, had a son by the name of Androgeus, and Androgeus was taking a trip once to Athens and got killed while he was there. It's said that he was killed by a bull that Heracles brought, to Athens. It's unclear, but as penance, Minos requires that Athens send 7 youths and 7 maidens every 9 years to be sacrificed into the labyrinth to the Minotaur. And now when Theseus shows up, they're just about to kick off the 3rd set of sacrifices to be sent to Crete. And this has been going on for nearly 30 years when Theseus arrives. And so when they're choosing the 7 youths and the 7 maidens to send, Theseus volunteers. He wants to go to Crete and, kind of get to the bottom of this. And also, it's not the best look to, show up to your new town, kill 51 of its residents, and just kind of, walk around like things are normal. So, he kind of wants to show them that he's more than just a murderer. So he volunteers. He sails off to Crete with the 13 other youths. He gets to Crete, and Minos has a few children. One of them is named Ariadne, and he has another daughter by the name of Phaedra. So Theseus gets to Crete with the other sacrifices. Ariadne sees him. She is immediately in love and decides that she can't let this guy die. So for our boy Theseus, she goes to Daedalus, who is an inventor, kind of like a tinkerer. He's the one that built the labyrinth, just like the most brilliant inventor that's ever lived, ever. And she gets him to make a thread. And so with this thread, she gives it to Theseus and she tells him, hey, listen, tie this thread to the door of the labyrinth. That way you'll be able to get to the center, kill the Minotaur, and get yourself back out. And so Theseus is like super grateful for this. And he tells her, once I get out of here, I'm going to take you with me. We're going to get married. You're going to be my queen when I become king because you've done me such a service. Theseus goes into the labyrinth, kills the Minotaur, able to trace his way back to the entrance, him with the rest of the sacrifices. They take a Cretan ship. He takes Ariadne, and they sail off. They escape. Theseus has kind of broken this very grisly tradition of, sending 14 children to be viciously murdered. On the way home, they stop at an island called Naxos. While they're on Naxos, Theseus goes back on his word and he abandons Ariadne. Now, there are different versions of this in certain myths. Some say that Dionysus appeared to Theseus and told him to leave Ariadne there because he wanted to marry her. And, Theseus does because you can't go against the god. In other versions of the myth, he leaves her there. He just doesn't want to bring her along, you know. She betrayed her family in order to help him, and so he's like a little worried about what the Athenian people might think of him bringing someone who's like a little shifty, little wishy-washy. Another important thing is before Theseus left, Aegeus tells him that the ship that they leave in has black sails because, you know, it's a morbid occasion. You're sending children off to die, so it's kind of like funerary in a way. Aegeus tells Theseus that if he should be successful in return, that he needs to change the sails on the ship to be white sails. Theseus is so, you know, wrapped up in, you know, getting back home, leaving Ariadne, that he forgets to change the color of the sails. So when he arrives back in Athens, his father is waiting atop the Acropolis, overlooking the sea, and when he sees that the ship is coming back with black sails, he is overcome with grief, and he launches himself from the cliff into the sea below, and he dies. And that's why that sea is called the Aegean Sea. We're back in Athens. Theseus is king now, you know, since his dad bit the dust. I guess bit the waves. So some years go by, and Theseus decides that he is going to go visit the island of the Amazons. They pull up to the Isle of the Amazons, and their leader, Antiope, you know, comes to greet him, comes aboard his ship, and as soon as she sets foot on the ship, they steal her and they sail back out. Theseus has his way with her and takes her back to Athens, you know, and this starts a whole thing. You know, the Amazons come to get her back. There's a big battle, and the time that it took for them to come to Athens to get her, you know, she bore a son to Theseus named Hippolytus. There's a big fight for Antiope, and it's said that in that fight she was accidentally killed by the Amazons. In some versions of the myth it says that she fought alongside Theseus against the Amazons. It seems a little shaky to me, but hey, again, who am I? Back over in Crete, Minos is no longer king. He's off looking for Daedalus and eventually meets his end while he's searching for Daedalus, and his son Deucalion takes the throne. Deucalion makes an agreement with Theseus and marries off his other little sister, Phaedra, because if you remember there was Ariadne and there was Phaedra, and he agrees to marry Phaedra to Theseus. Now, Phaedra is a lot younger than Theseus, about the same age as his son, Hippolytus. Phaedra moves in. She is not the biggest fan of Theseus. Theseus is, you know, boorish, aggressive, not a fun guy to hang out with. But Hippolytus, on the other hand, is everything his father isn't. He's, you know, gentle, is considerate, you know, he loves animals, he really loves his horses. And he's a devout follower of Artemis. And being so, he has also taken Artemis's vow of chastity. So he has no interest in any type of sex whatsoever. Phaedra falls madly in love with Hippolytus, and when Theseus is away, she offers herself to him. And Hippolytus is absolutely repulsed. His brain isn't even going that way. He wants nothing to do with anything sexual whatsoever. And he also can't fathom being in love with his stepmother. That, you know, seems abominable to him. Phaedra is absolutely distraught and embarrassed, and so she hangs herself. But before hanging herself, she leaves a note that, you know, names Hippolytus. And so Theseus, already not having the greatest relationship with his son, he gets back home, sees that his wife has killed herself, and that, you know, his son has been blamed in the note that she left behind. Theseus goes and prays to his father Poseidon and says, you know, Poseidon at some point has granted Theseus a wish, and so he wishes for Hippolytus to be destroyed. Now, if you remember, like I said before, Hippolytus really loves his horses. He's a great charioteer, and so he is, you know, whipping his chariot along the beach one day, and a massive wave, you know, is building up in the ocean. It's said to have literally crested to the sky, and from this wave, an enormous white bull comes charging out of the water. So the bull and this wave crash into Hippolytus. They make him wreck. You know, his chariot turns over. So his chariot, and his horses are all just in a broken pile, super dead. So yeah, super not great. Not great on Theseus. Not great on Poseidon. Not great on Phaedra. Yeah, man. not great in any regard. There are a race of horse people called the centaurs. We've all seen centaurs. They have the bottom of a horse. They're basically like the top of a person attached to a horse's neck. There's also a race of people called the Lapiths. The Lapiths are a separate race of horse people, but they don't look like centaurs. I guess they're just kind of like vaguely horsey. Anyway, the Lapiths and the centaurs have beef. They are not cool. And there's this guy named Persephone who is descended from the Lapiths. Persephone has heard, all these things about Theseus, how he's like a great ruler, how he's so big and strong, and so he decides that he's gonna go and test his mettle one day. Persephone goes and steals a bunch of Theseus's cattle, and he's like riding away with it. Theseus gets word of this. He is on Persephon's ass. So Persephone turns and he stops. He jumps off his chariot. Theseus does the same, and they walk up to one another, and they are just so impressed without exchanging any words, so impressed by the physicality of the other man that they decide that they're going to be friends. Fuck the cattle, we're buds now. Sometime later, Persephone is marrying a woman named Hippodamia, and so the Lapiths are invited to the wedding because they're related to Persephone, and the centaurs are invited for reasons unknown to me. Even so, things are going pretty well. Everyone's behaving themselves, having a great time, but the centaurs are drinking wine that they aren't used to, and so they're getting pretty sauced. So one of the centaurs, having become way too drunk, his name is Eurytus. Eurytus has the bright idea that he is gonna kidnap the bride. So he jumps up, grabs her by the hair, and starts to drag her away. And so his centaur buddies look up and see what he's doing, and not one of them says, "Oh man, we should stop him. That's a terrible idea." They see what he's doing and decide that they're going to join in. Now there's chaos at the wedding. Centaurs and Lapiths are fighting. People are dying. It's just a bad time. Eventually, the centaurs are defeated, but lots of people have died. They, managed to rescue Hippodamia. So, anyway, some time goes on, and eventually, Persephon's wife, Hippodamia, dies. And so, Persephone comes to Theseus one day, and he says, "Listen, man, both our wives have died. We've just been having, a terrible go in the romance section. So, we deserve women who aren't going to die on us. So what I think we should do is go and procure ourselves demigod wives, specifically daughters of Zeus." They begin plotting, and they come up with the bright idea to steal little Helen of Sparta for Theseus to marry. They go and very covertly steal Helen away from Sparta. She's still a child at this point, so he literally can't marry her. He takes her to his mother. Yeah, so Aethra is now watching after Theseus' child bride. And they decide that for Persephone, they're going to steal another demigod daughter of Zeus, that being Persephone, the same Persephone that's married to Hades, in Hades. The boys make their way into the underworld. Their plan is to go to the palace of Hades and steal Persephone so that Persephone can marry her, because that's definitely going to be a consequence-free action. Anywho, they're dicking around in the underworld, lost as shit, and so they get tired. There's a rock that looks very, very inviting to sit on. And so these fuckers pop a squat. And once they sit down, they are stuck. They cannot get off of this rock, no matter how hard they try. And while they're on this rock, they're stuck here for a while. And they're being tortured relentlessly by the Furies. It's not like, that stoic torture you see from heroes in movies. I mean, they are wailing, screaming, and crying, having a bad go. Heracles is in the underworld at this time because he's returning Cerberus. So he hears their cries and he goes to them. And so he sees that Theseus is stuck to the rock, and he rips him up. And I say literally rips him up because Theseus was stuck. His skin, the skin of his ass, was fused to the rock. And so when Heracles pulled him up, he left his ass behind. And so it's said that the descendants of Theseus have very small buttocks because Theseus got his ass ripped off. And so then Heracles goes to help Persephone, but then hears thundering above. So he can't help Persephone because it was Persephone who was actually planning to marry Persephone, and so he has to stay down there. Yeah, that's Theseus's time in the underworld. We come back to Athens. Theseus erects a temple in honor of Heracles, for saving him. But while Theseus was gone, Castor and Pollux, who are brothers of Helen, have come and rescued her but they've also done some raising in Attica, which is where Athens is located. So when Theseus comes back, he is physically weaker. There has been, a lot of just disquiet in Athens. And so he, for a few reasons, is unable to maintain his throne. His health just isn't there, and he can no longer maintain control of the people. So he quietly ships his children out of Athens, and he himself slips out of Athens. But while he's sailing away, a storm knocks his ship off course, and so he comes to Skyros. Now, King Lycomedes rules in Skyros, and it's said that Theseus has some property, some lands in Skyros. And so he's been blown off course toward Skyros, and so when he goes there, he has an audience with King Lycomedes, and he tells him, hey, I got that spot out back, I want to make camp here while I get myself together, get my wits about me, you know what I'm saying, get some meat back on my bones. And Lycomedes is like, yeah, sure, man, I gotcha. Tell you what, let's go for a walk. I'll take you up to the highest point in Skyros, and you'll be able to see, exactly all of the lands that you were in command of here. It'll be great for you. Theseus is like, hey, that sounds good, man. Theseus had a rough go of things. It's nice for him to get some good hospitality. So the king walks him up to the highest point in Skyros, and as they're looking out over the land, Lycomedes kicks Theseus in his back. He flies off the cliff, and he dies. Yeah, so that's Theseus, birth to death. He did some not great things, had some not great things happen to him, but, that kind of happens when you're a shitbag. Anywho, I hope this has been fun. Hope I didn't, ramble too much. Yeah, that's the story of Theseus, king of bastards. So, like I said, I hope this video was enjoyable. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time for the next one. Again, this is Kid Achilles. Peace out.